1990s, Paris, France. A group of urban explorers have just entered the Paris catacombs via a manhole entrance. The section they are in is off limits to the public. What they are doing is completely illegal. Yet, this does not deter them. If anything, it only sparks curiosity. Curiosity of what lays deep into the catacombs. It had been a while since the group had entered. At this point, they were deep into the catacombs. Where they were was almost completely unexplored. Eventually, one of the group members spots an object on the tunnel floor in front of them. It was a camcorder. In the moment, they didn't think much of it. Maybe another explorer had dropped it without realizing or accidentally left it behind. And as the ancient Roman saying goes, finders keepers. After this find, the group begins to express their weariness and decide now is a good time to head back. And with that, this marks the end of their trip into the catacombs. And for the camcorder, it will be returning home with a group member who we will call Mark. Upon entering his house, Mark takes a seat in the living room and decides to check if there are any recordings on the camcorder. And what he would find would be one of the most disturbing cases of found footage the internet has ever seen. This is what was on the camcorder. The video depicts a man running through the catacombs in a panic, and then, towards the end, he drops the camera and proceeds to run into the darkness. Initially, this footage was kept hidden from the public, but after a couple of years passed, a man named Francis Freeland, who was behind a documentary project called The Scariest Places on Earth, acquired the footage and released it to the public. And then, some years later, the footage made its way to YouTube. The man in the video has still yet to be identified. His remains were never found down there. He left no trace behind besides the camcorder, and it's almost as if he just disappeared. Today, people online question the authenticity of this footage, claiming it to be a hoax staged by the producers of The Scariest Places on Earth. However, a counter-argument to that is, for the past 24 years, neither the explorers or the producers behind the documentary ever came forward to denounce the footage's authenticity. Which, if it is a hoax, this would be a hard lie to keep for all that time. Regardless, whether a hoax or not, this footage is disturbing. Just something about the thought of going insane in the confinements of the catacombs, with no exit for miles, no light, and no sense of direction. And this is why I believe that this footage earns its spots on the disturbing side of the internet. On the 3rd of June 2020, a post would pop up on the Reddit Bureau of Investigation subreddit. The Redditor that created the post was named had just one question, one simple question that would mark the beginning of one of the internet's biggest unsolved mysteries. The question is, any idea what's happening in this photo? This is the photo the OP linked. The OP then writes, "Someone in a mom's group I am in on Facebook said someone she knows found this in a book bought at Goodwill. She claims to have given it to police. My first thought was, it's probably from a movie, but can't find anything on TinEye. Thoughts? Looks like a guy face down in the water, on the left with his feet bound, and on the right, a guy with knees up tied to his body. Also, shadow looks like guy holding a gun." This thread instantly started gaining upvotes, due to how captivating just this one image was. And in short time, people began flooding in with replies. One Redditor had this to say: "It appears there's two boys in the water, both legs duct taped together and both hands bound behind them. The shadow looks like a girl holding a stick. She appears to be farther back since her shadow is long and skinny. Since she's farther back and her shadow is more distorted, it would be super hard to tell what she could be holding. They look like teens." And another Redditor stated, "I know it's hard to get anything from this photo, but comparing the guy in the red shirt to the one face down, either that's a fake body or that person is dead. The color of their skin looks pretty bad." Soon, reality began to sink in that maybe this was a lot more serious than initially thought. Eventually, one Redditor began sharpening and color correcting the photo to help see what was going on. In the meantime, this mystery began to spread to other subreddits, one of them being r/unsolved mysteries. In this post, the OP states the main theory surrounding the photo. Theory 1. The photo is from the set of a low-budget horror film. A lot of Redditors agreed with this first theory, due to its plausibility. It could be a photo from a movie that was never finished, or even a movie so obscure nobody could recognize it. One of the top replies on this thread is also backing this theory out by saying, "My dad and his idiot friends used to go make movies in the woods as teenagers/young adults in the late 60s. They'd pretend to be in war or pirates looking for treasure, Lewis and Clark, etc. I've seen some odd pictures, It could be that simple, or at least, I hope so. Theory 2. The photo was taken during some sort of military training session or some sort of fraternity hazing. While this theory may be true, it still does not explain the duct tape over the man with the red shirt's mouth. And finally, Theory 3. The men in the photo are tied up against their will and were in serious danger when the photo was taken. This theory only gets more dark when a Reddit user would reply with this. I remember my grandpa telling me about a series of 4 murders across the Midwest in 1987, or something where people kept being found tied up and dumped in ponds in fields. Thought he said the 2 who did it were caught due to one of their victims surviving barely. Today, this has yet to be identified as true, but regardless, at the time, it was an intriguing lead. Another lead that started to develop is that the identity of one of the men in the photo belongs to Teddy Franks, who was murdered way back in 1986. The main Reddit user behind this investigation reached out to Teddy's family in hopes of them being able to tell if it was Teddy or not. This lead eventually grew so big that Fox News covered it. But at the end of the day, this lead too fell short. Mostly out of the uncertainty of it actually being Teddy in that photo. And just like the many other perplexing mysteries, this one remains unsolved to this day. The year is 1996. A woman named Diao Qing is attending university in China. She's majoring in computer application. She's already a year into it. Diao was described by peers and family members as a shy girl. A girl who would almost never talk to strangers. So, when she wouldn't return back to her dorm one day, it was obvious that something had gone seriously wrong. It's January 10th, the day of her disappearance. For this initial day, Diao's roommate found it odd that she hadn't returned. But regardless, she didn't think much of it. It was just odd. It wasn't like her to spontaneously go out with friends without further notice. As days passed, however, worry eventually began setting in that something sinister was at play. And with this worry came a missing person report. And shortly after, police jumped onto the case. They began their search, asking people around campus when the last time they saw her was. From this, they collected some noteworthy information. According to various accounts, she was last seen in dormitory management wearing a red coat with a black lining. And any time past that point, nobody had seen her. Days pass. Still no leads on what happened to her. On campus, a sanitary worker is cleaning up some rooms when he finds a bag. Inside the bag is what seems to be pork. And don't ask me why, but he takes it home to eat. Once home from his shift, he began to prepare the meat. And then he saw it. Among what he thought was pork was 3 human fingers. When police arrived, they realized that all the meat in the bag belonged to a human. Then, over time, 7 more of these bags of human flesh were located around campus. The areas they were found go as follows: a stadium, the campus entrance gate, the hospital, and also along various roadsides. In each of these bags were hundreds of evenly cut pieces of human flesh, and all of them belonged to Diao Aiqing. In total, Diao had been cut into over 2,000 precise pieces. Nothing like this had ever been seen before. Shortly after these discoveries, investigations were launched around campus. Authorities were scanning the place up and down in hopes of finding some type of clue that the murderer left behind. However, these investigations would inevitably yield nothing. And today, this mystery is still unsolved. It's one of China's most perplexing cases to date. So, how is this case tied to the internet? This is disturbing side of the internet, right? Well, while searching for the topics for this video, I came across an old-looking blog post that caught my interest. I started skimming through it, reading various sentences, until I reached the bottom. At the bottom of this page was an image. At first, I had no clue what it was, until I read into it more. This image I can't show, but I'll explain to you what it is. Basically, it's the photo from Diao Aiqing's case. It's the photo of her remains, all 2,000 pieces, sitting inside a huge tub. I've seen a lot in my time on the internet, but something about this photo brought me an overlooming sense of dread. I advise that you don't go looking for this image, but if you willingly go against my word, just know, it's nothing light.